We are living through one of the most significant shifts in how people work. In business, education, research, retail, service, and nonprofit, people are discovering new ways to think, create, solve problems, and collaborate with artificial intelligence. I believe we'll look back on this as a defining moment, which is why I'm seeking out the people living it and documenting how they're adapting along the way. I'm Adair Taulbee. This is AI in the Wild. How AI is being adopted in the real world, one conversation at a time. Now let's get into it. Hi Heath, welcome Dr. Blackman. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah, so this is my new kind of series called AI in the Wild, where I'm talking to really smart people that I know about how they're applying AI in their fields. And you and I have had a few conversations, and I think you've just done so much with it that would be awesome to share. But before we do that, do you want to give a little introduction about yourself and your work and where you
Sure.
are?
Yeah, so I'm at Texas A&M University. I'm an associate professor in the biology department. My research focuses heavily on genome evolution. And as a scientist, I feel like my job is to learn as much as I can about the natural world. And we have these new AIs that are fundamentally flawed but useful intelligences. And so
Hmm.
my lab and I have been trying to figure out how do we leverage these to move science faster, to do better science, more impactful science. And it's been an interesting challenge over the last couple of
Yeah,
years as every 6 months a new model comes out and there are new things to learn and new abilities.
yeah. Would you say you were an early adopter?
I like to think I'm a super early adopter,
Yeah.
uh, but I feel like if I even just take a few weeks off, I feel like I'm behind already because of the pace of change. I started out, I was totally in on ChatGPT, and I was telling everybody how amazing ChatGPT is. And then a new Gemini model came out, and I was like, oh, you have to use the Gemini model now. And then Claude. And so I feel like this is a hard space to stay relevant and on top of things right now.
While doing your job, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That other thing. Although you have automated, I think, an impressive amount of your day-to-day work from what you showed me in the past. You want to talk about that?
Sure. So, I mean, I love the idea of using AI tools in my science to do research. But early on, I think one of the things that I realized AI could do most effectively was a lot of administrative kind of minutia and bureaucracy that you have to
You
deal
mean the
with.
fun things like email?
The fun things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, uh, going through emails, there are lots of different kinds of form letters that I have to produce for students and for different committees that I'm on. And
Okay.
being able to reduce the amount of time it takes to get the first draft of one of those letters or one of those memos has been game changing for me. So I use basically, I have prompts already set up, ready to go for when I need to write a letter of recommendation for a student or for when I need to write a promotion letter for another faculty member. None of the AIs right now do a good enough job that I can just take that letter and go with it. But I can get a decent first draft that I can then edit, and something that would have taken me 50 minutes now takes me 15 minutes. And
Sure.
so that is probably the single biggest impact that AI has had on my own day in day out work is it's just allowed me to be more productive without letting the quality of my product suffer.
Okay. So are you still kicking tasks like that off manually, or do you have some automated and like orchestrated or?
Most of those are kicked off manually. I do have a fair number of things that I have AI do on a schedule,
Mhm.
or and the things that I do in that area are more keeping up with the literature and new developments in my subfield.
Okay.
So I have an AI agent that actually goes out and uses a set of keywords and searches the internet for new articles that have been published that are related to my own research. And then each morning I get a briefing email from the AI that tells me about new articles that have been published and why they may be important to my work. the success of that has been variable,
Really?
but
In what way?
the first month of doing this, I got a tremendous number of articles that were frankly not at all related to my research,
Mm.
but there was some kind of single word key overlap somewhere that made the AI trigger on an article. And over time, I've had to increase the constraints and create a better prompt for the AI that will narrow in on the research I'm interested in.
Do you think improving your context instructions has improved it, or also the AI has improved, or neither?
So, definitely the models have improved because my first version of this was over a year ago. And
Okay.
so, in a year, I've switched from Gemini to Claude and through multiple models within the Claude ecosystem.
Hmm.
And so the models have definitely gotten better. But also, I think I've learned a lot more about providing context to models
Hmm.
so that they know what they need to know when they're doing a task. And I think appreciating context is maybe one of the most important things that I've learned in the last year.
Yeah, I agree.
Previously, I would always just try and give a single prompt and then I would get something
Mm.
out. And I realized that so much of that was repetitive. And if I developed kind of controlled methods to frame the context of what the AI is working on, that I would get a much better response,
Yeah, I also see a lot of
much more frequently.
context bleed, like because if you're switching between different tasks, projects, entities, whatever your kind of unit of work is. But so do you have a system in place to like organize all of that between projects or files outside of AI tools? How are you organizing all that these days?
So I'm going to be honest here and say that I have mixed. Uh,
That's
I
okay. I'm
have
in the
I've
same boat. I like to say I'm fully organized, but I think I'm about 60% because it's like a constant thing you have to keep up with.
so I have figured out how to stay really organized in this area when it comes to my research. Every
Hmm.
I have a large lab, and at any given time, we maybe have 15 or 20 active research projects. Every one of those research projects has a GitHub repository, and in the root of every single GitHub repository is a context file
Hmm.
that basically provides a overall setting and framework for any AI that I'm using on that project. And so the very first thing I'll tell the AI is read this context file to bring yourself up to date on where we're at on this project. And that has worked amazing. I don't have as good of a system in place for the administrative side of things.
Mm.
And
Okay.
that tends to be more one offs still and something that I need to improve in.
Yeah. Now, are you sharing these context files like through GitHub with students that are actively involved in these research projects as well?
So I actually believe in completely open science. And so every GitHub repository that I have is public, and
Cool.
anybody anywhere in the world can go look at those files. They can look at the data, they can look at everything.
Very cool. So are the students as up to date as you are on everything with the AI, you think?
I have 6 PhD students, and one of them is, and the other five to varying degrees less so. I th- I think this is actually an issue that I'm spending more and more time on as a professor.
Yeah.
In that, I think that academia, let's say writ large, like actually K through 12 and higher education, for the first couple of years of the pandemic, our focus was on keeping students from cheating with AI,
Yeah, I
which
know.
is great. That's good. That was something we needed to be doing, but I am feeling more and more that my responsibility as an educator is to help these students learn how to be productive and ethical in their use of AI.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, that is not something that any of our current educators are trained in. And so at this point, the only educators that are doing that are the ones that have just taken it upon themselves, I feel like,
Okay.
to do so.
Yeah. I think in academics, it still seems to be very much like a hot potato that nobody wants to deal with. in some ways. And also, I think there's a lot of, I've heard things like it's going to ruin critical thinking skills, etc., which I don't know. I don't know what your take on that is, but I think to actually get good output, you have to be clearer and more concise than you do generally speaking. So I don't know that that's a true statement or that I agree with it. What do you think?
I think in general, I agree with you. I have tried bypassing teaching students to code and having them do all of their coding with an AI partner, basically.
Okay.
And the result was really poor. It was one of the worst classes that I've ever taught. If I'm
Oh,
just to judge, like how much I think the students learned from the beginning of the semester to the end of the semester. And what I learned, this was last fall, fall of 2025, is exactly what you said. You have to understand and provide very precise instructions about the kind of
mhm.
output that you want.
Right.
And then you have to, you at the end of the day, you're going to have to be able to vet the output of the AI. And
For sure.
if you can't vet it, then I wouldn't use it. I would not use AI to write a paper or a letter in another language that I don't
Hmm.
know and that I can't read without having somebody who can read it. And I think the same goes for anything you're producing with AI, whether it's a spreadsheet, a database, a anything, code, etc.
So, in the context of like a research, like a student, then if they're coming in net new to a project, they probably really don't know the data and the context getting started. So, is that part of why starting AI first did not yield a good output? Because
100%.
they couldn't look at the results and have some idea of whether or not they were high quality.
And in this particular example, they were trying to produce code to do analyses and to visualize data. And they would get code that would run, but they didn't have the skill set to understand if the plot they were producing or the analysis they were completing, whether it was the correct analysis or whether the plot was even possible with the data that went into it. And
Yeah.
so I'll be teaching the same class again this fall. And my plan is to spend 2 to 3 weeks on teaching them basics of coding so that they can read the code the AI produces. And then we'll spend a lot of time in the class this time just looking at AI code and interpreting exactly what's going on in each step. And I'm hoping that this will be a better experience for both me and the students.
Are epistemic honesty issues at all part of that when it's generating code? Because I know, like a lot of times, I give it specific instructions to, not act confident about things it doesn't know about, and especially data sets that change over time, like to not reference old ones, and if it doesn't have the newest, don't reference the thing from 6 months ago or whatever. But I don't know if that applies in coding per se, or if it would help.
No, I think it definitely does. And I think that this kind of gets back to context. And so I think that
Hmm.
that's an example of where the model is incorporating inappropriate context and assuming that something it knew in the past was still accurate and appropriate for today's work. And I think that maybe this is one of the areas that I struggle with the most with my day in, day out use of AI
Hmm.
is, and different models are going to vary here, but some of the models are more prone to say look at my recent chat history with them and incorporate something from that that actually shouldn't be involved in the thing that we're doing right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
And Gemini, for instance, which I have been using a fair amount in the last few weeks, it seems to do this often to me. I will have had a conversation just kind of in passing, wondering about something, and then it pulls in some aspect of what we discussed there into the current conversation. And I'm like, no, that was just a
Yeah. Wrong
query that
context.
I had. Yeah,
I know. Yes. So you spend some time arguing with AI too, is what I'm hearing, or repeating yourself.
a lot,
And
a
or
lot.
yes. I think that's the biggest challenge right now. And you try and come up with like a context management to deal with that. But I don't know of 100% way to deal with it yet either. Which is where like
Yeah,
the students not having context and not knowing what they're looking at really becomes problematic because if you don't know that it's wrong. or that
Yeah.
it's from
Uh,
another context or another conversation or whatever the scenario is.
and I mean, you brought this up a few minutes ago, but the confidence
Oh,
level
yeah.
that models have in things that they say can, I mean, actually, I think it's really dangerous. So I'm going to freely admit here, I guess this would have been about 6 months ago or so, maybe 5 months ago. I really got excited about the kind of newest capabilities for the most recent release of Opus from Claude. And I started trying to just see, how much can I get done? And this is like doing computational biology research. I wanted to see just like how much can I get done, me and an AI, if I just make this my full time job for the next 2 or 3 days. And I did some super impressive, really valuable work.
Mhm.
But I also spent several hours producing what I was thinking were going to be really exciting results, only to realize that one of the very first decisions that I made with the AI early on was deeply flawed. And it had told me that, yes, you can do this approach. The math that you're doing is sound and you meet all the assumptions that you need to go for it. And then it ends up that that was false at the very very beginning, and so like 2 days of work just completely wiped out, because I didn't push hard enough and just took its word that like, yes, this is good. And
Okay, so
so
is it, if you explain it to us, is it something that anybody not deep in your field would understand?
so
Is there such a
basically
way to
it's,
explain it to us?
yeah, so
Okay.
basically in this work I needed to do some really complex linear algebra, and I thought I knew the answer. And it was like, yes, that's correct. That equation does equal
Oh.
this set of equations.
Oh.
And so then I had this new set of equations I'm using, and I did a whole bunch more algebra to come up with this
Oh.
really cool finding at the end. But it ends up
Mm,
that very first step of the math was deeply flawed. And
I
so
see.
I just did like 2 days of math homework for 8 hours a day for no reason,
Mm.
is basically
That
what it,
sounds painful.
yeah, I was pretty mad, uh, but it
So
was
at
on
the
me.
end of all that, you needed a mental health break, I'm sure. And then what? Did you revisit it, or is it still kind of on a shelf somewhere?
I think it was a dead end
Oh,
because that
okay.
first step is wrong.
Completely dead.
So I haven't revisited that. But what I have done is that when I am doing that kind of computational theory work in my lab
Hmm.
now, I tell students every single step of the math, you have to understand it. There isn't, you cannot have a step that you don't understand.
Okay.
Because if you do, you have no idea of whether or not what you're doing is actually of any value whatsoever.
Okay. Interesting. So a little while ago, you talked about higher academia relative to AI. And so you're in an institution, right? So how is that playing out internally from what you can share?
So I think I can share everything that A&M is doing right now. So there is a big push at our university to be in on AI, but I think the problem is that nobody really knows what that means.
Well,
Everyone
yes.
wants to do something. I had to
Hmm.
approve a new course that's going to be taught today, and it was on using agentic tools in data analysis. And I approved the course, but then I sent it to another faculty member and I told them, like, we need to create a workshop like this course for our own faculty because our faculty don't understand these topics well.
Right.
And from the student perspective, A&M has really left this up to professors.
Hmm.
So they passed a student rule when ChatGPT started getting good that said that AI usage in classes will be the determined by the faculty, and whatever the rules are that the faculty makes for AI use, those are what will apply in each class. And so we're at this interesting transition point where you have
That's
some
like really
professors.
difficult for a student to manage because they're like, oh, I'm switching to this class now. I need to not stop doing the way I've become used to working. Right. Because it's not like, okay, continue. Sorry.
No, but
It's
I
kind of
agree
like
with you
not, someone didn't think that
100%.
all the way out. Yeah, yeah.
Because
Okay,
I have students, or I have colleagues who are still in this mindset of AI is cheating. How do we stop it?
of
And
course.
then you have
Yeah.
people like myself who I tell my students, I want you to use AI. I will assume that you have used AI, and I will grade you assuming that you've used AI.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think my job as an instructor is to figure out ways to make the course content such that when they use AI, they're learning more than if they weren't. And I think
Yeah.
this is a real challenge. There was a really good study that came out just last week
Mm-hmm.
where they had individuals write a 1 page essay on some topic,
Mm-hmm.
and they were randomly divided into two groups. One group got to use AI on to make the first draft, and then they worked to edit and improve it. And the other group had to write a first draft, and then they used AI to edit and improve. And what that study showed was, at least in tasks that involve writing and learning in that writing process, that the students that didn't use AI at first did better and retained more information than those that used AI in the first step, but not in the second step. And so I think we just need to continue to be vigilant as we learn how do I want to phrase this? As we learn how using AI impacts our understanding.
Mm-hmm.
I use a calculator almost every day. And
Mm-hmm.
I know that at some point I learned that there was like an algorithm that you can use to come up with a square root. I
Mm-hmm.
no longer know that. If you asked me to calculate the square root of 231, I'd have no idea. I'd have to just go down to some number that's a square below that and then say it's like 7 point something, you know? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm okay with that. And I think that as we use AI more, we're going to decide that we're okay with not knowing how to get certain answers because we know that we have a reliable source of a good answer, just like a
Yeah.
calculator gives us for basic math. I think one of the real challenges here, though, is that AI is stochastic, and sometimes we get a good answer, and sometimes we get a poor answer. And
Mm-hmm.
so, as long as we're still at that state, I think we have to be able to maintain a complete understanding of the steps along the way. You know, if the
Yeah,
calculator occasionally gave you a bad answer, you would still need to know how to calculate that square root yourself because you would need to
for
make sure
sure.
that it gave you the right answer. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, that's absolutely true. One thing I think is interesting. So this in the private sector, lots of big companies are laying people off in droves, or they were. That may have slowed. From my perspective, it was somewhat premature because you had executives going, "Woohoo! AI is going to replace all these people." I kind of like the scenarios you're describing. The business or corporate versions of those things are playing out in reality that are like, oh, maybe not. Maybe we acted too soon. But at the same time, they're creating new positions, AI roles that they don't really understand. They're not qualified to fill. So it's creating this kind of revolving door of people. But in the context of academia, I mean, part of the responsibility of colleges and universities is to prepare the workforce, right? Somewhat. I mean, I know that there's purely academic focuses for colleges and institutions, but a lot of it is like we need people ready to go into the workforce. So is academia aware of that situation that's happening in the private sector at all? Is it part of the conversation as far as you
yes,
know? Okay.
yes. And I think that we are very aware of the need of our students to get jobs. So I'll actually tell you, like, our departments are evaluated. One of the metrics that we're evaluated on is the average salary of our graduates 2 years after completion of their degree.
You're kidding me.
No,
Does that depend on self-provided survey information, I guess?
I'm
How
not
else
on the
would they?
collection side of
Okay.
that data, so I'm not 100% sure on how it's collected, but we get a
Okay.
report each year that
Okay.
tells us like what our former students are making on average, how many
Okay.
are employed in different sectors, and
So there's a lot of
more.
attention on it. For
Yes,
sure. Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Which, honestly, at a public university, I think there should be. I mean, we have parents that are spending a ton of money to get their kids into classrooms, and we need to make sure that we're providing a valuable product and that we really are helping these students get further than they would get without a degree. But I think that there is a real lack of clarity in academia as to exactly what it is we should be teaching them to
Mm-hmm.
make them the most useful possible as
Yeah.
employees when they leave our university. I am teaching a class to 10 freshmen as an experiment this fall semester that's
Mm-hmm.
called Trends in AI. And my reason for teaching this is, honestly, I just want to sit in a room for an hour a week with these freshmen and try to get them leveraging AI in
Mm-hmm.
every way they can and get them really comfortable with experimenting and playing with new tools as they come out.
Mm-hmm.
Because honestly, I think that today, at least where the technology is and kind of the pace of development, I think the most useful AI skill is just a lack of fear and a willingness to try and see what you can make work and what you can
Yeah.
produce.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what I'm focusing on with students, is making them conversant and making them feel like, oh yeah, I can figure this out. If somebody else can do it, I can do it too. I'll watch a
It,
video. You know, I'll figure it out.
right. It also has the added benefit of keeping you in the loop of all the new cool stuff without having to have like read a daily briefing.
1000%. So
Not that you thought of that, but hey, yeah.
no, I rarely teach any class where the students don't teach me something.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
That makes
it's one of
sense.
the fun parts of teaching is, you'll be up there talking and then somebody raises their hand and they tell you, why didn't you do such and such? And
Uh-huh.
I'm now far enough along in my career and I have enough self-confidence that I just tell them, because I had no idea that was possible, but that's cool.
Yeah.
And we're going to do that from now on.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
humbling, isn't it? Especially when it first happens to you and you're like, oh, I'm now no longer like, yeah, but we're way past that stage. I do have one question back on that study though. Because to get really like base level, you have to make sure people are not using like an AI tool that already knows something about them. Right? So hopefully they
Yeah.
were like, you can't use your own AI account. You can't use like, I mean, even
Yeah.
Gemini is scraping stuff from Google profiles in the browser. So like it skews you're not going to get the same answer between people. So
Yeah.
anyways,
And
check that on that survey. I'd be really curious to know.
I would hope, I don't remember, but I would hope that they had them use like a incognito session or something like
I'm sure
that where
somebody thought of
you're
this.
starting blank. Because otherwise, definitely that could be an issue.
Yeah. Well, it's an issue because it's like using anything now that's using your information. It's going to try and give you the answer you're looking for. That's crazy. Well, that's really interesting. So tell me this. Where are you hoping AI can take your lab and your research in the next, say, 6 to 12 months? And I know that's a long time in AI land, but take a stab at it.
Well, I think the biggest thing that I'm looking for in the next 12 months is we have our first piece of software that's based on LLMs that we're going to be releasing to the public. And so I'm really excited to see if and how people leverage this. So this is a software that uses LLMs to basically scour all of the scientific literature that's ever been published and collect data that's useful for a project that you're working on. And it's been one of my main areas of interest for the last 6 months or so. In my own research, my first couple years of grad school, I spent reading papers and having an Excel sheet open on my computer and just typing in, transcribing data from papers into an Excel sheet. And it's been an incredible, valuable resource, all of that data that I took in. I've used it and it's been the basis for several studies that we've done in the lab. But it took 2 years of my life. And to
Very
me, this is
tedious.
very tedious,
Yeah.
which is, I think, today with where the AI functionality sits, that
Mm-hmm.
automating those tedious jobs is one of the biggest areas of impact. And so we are kind of finishing off the manuscript that describes the software and all of the kind of accuracy and coverage studies that we've done of what it's been able to collect.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that sounds
The
huge. And you're going to make that available to everybody.
Yeah, like all my projects is already available. It's just online in my GitHub.
It's just on your
Um,
GitHubs. So like
just everything.
what are the data sources for that though? I'm guessing there are
Every
repositories.
every scientific article that's publicly available. So there are repositories like this one called bioRxiv that people will often submit a paper to before it's published, and then
Mm-hmm.
mini journals are open access. So any publicly available literature. And I think
Very cool.
beyond that, I think the thing that I'm really looking for in the next 12 months, and this is, I think, probably actually more interesting to some of your listeners, is data security. So I have certain data, any data that has student information in it, I cannot allow to kind of go up and be used by a commercial company like Google or Anthropic or anybody like that. And so I have to be really careful to keep my data that is student related separate from any data that my AI has access to.
Mm-hmm.
And I am hoping that more of the AI companies start developing tiers or options to have all of that data stay secure. I'm fine with my scientific data being out there. I believe it should be open, and I'm happy for model makers to scrape my GitHub and use anything in there to help train their models.
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to student data, that's just not an option. There are legal restrictions on what can and cannot be shared. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's one of the things that I'm really looking for AI companies to kind of step up to the plate and make broadly available, instead of right now the privacy solutions that I'm seeing are kind of one-off solutions that they have for different large companies. But if you're just an individual that's using AI, there are some providers that I haven't been able to find a way to use them without sharing that data potentially with them.
Well, I have seen though, like the Chat GPTs and Claudes, and I haven't looked at others to be honest with you. With the paid account tiers, even just the individual accounts, you can now turn off the public training. But yeah, for the real data privacy, like the isolation and all that, I think they start at 25 minimum user licenses, the last I checked, to get
Okay.
those features. Which I don't know in your world, but 25 minimum users is a bit high for a lot of medium-sized businesses even at this point in my like consulting world. So I imagine that might be more than your lab would need, for example.
Now, my university does have these kind of firewalled versions that are compliant with the rules and regulations, but they always run like a year behind in what model they're serving. And a year behind in AI is like you don't even have
There's no
it.
point in using it. Why
Yeah,
don't they just keep the models up to date? Because obviously they've stood up environments for this, either on-prem or in the cloud, but isolated environments, right?
that's a
Maybe it's
great
difficult to
question.
drop in the new, I don't know. I think it's pretty easy though. A lot of people are using Mac minis.
Yeah,
Have you heard that?
yeah.
Yeah. I think there was like they were all sold out for a couple of months there for that reason.
Yeah, I have a
Mm.
Mac Mini that I've thought about setting up as like a lab AI. But right now, I'm just paying for the students who want an AI, who want to experiment with AI more. I pay for them to have individual memberships right now,
Yes. Okay.
and I let them kind of pick which model they're
Okay.
wanting to use. I have one student that really likes ChatGPT, and then another that prefers Claude. And
Yeah.
then I pay for Claude and Gemini and ChatGPT. So because I want to play with all
Okay.
three.
Yeah, I pay for several also, but like with consulting clients, where I think we're headed is more towards the workspace or business accounts so that you can control that public training setting on behalf of everybody. It's not up to them whether or not they want to go turn that on or off because they come defaulted on in all of the consumer grade ones. So
Yeah.
that's one way I've been leaning. But also, I think we just did our first AI policy, also talking about what you should and shouldn't put in it back to your point. Because not first, so in your land, it's like private student information. In law, it's, confidential client attorney privileged information. In medicine, it's EPHI. Like everybody has it. Fintech companies have like credit cards, social security numbers, all sorts of stuff. So everybody that has really any data, except for maybe some manufacturing and a few very narrow like types of entities, have this concern. And I've
Yeah.
seen, though, to your point, I've seen a company pop up, I think it's called Hather, Hathr, that offered like a mid-tier, but a private instance, basically. So
Okay.
I'm hoping some more will pop up like that, not just for
Yeah.
medical in particular. So we'll see. We can cross our fingers on that.
I would also love for somebody, and maybe this exists and I just haven't found it yet, but I would love for somebody to develop a interface that lets me just toggle between the different flagship models that are available and make it really easy for me to have an agentic work area that I can switch between models easily, quickly, and have context and things transfer
Context
between
continuity.
models. Yes.
Yes. I'm actually testing a tool right now. It's called AI Toolbox from AppSumo. And the only catch is you have to use the browser versions, but it overlays in there and lets you carry context across different, like Anthropic to OpenAI to whatever. But I'm only about a week in, so I can't say if it's going to be great or not yet. I'll let you know. But yeah.
I'll be interested to hear, because there are, for instance, math. ChatGPT is much better at math than Claude, is, or Gemini is. It easily outperforms them. But for for writing right now, at least, I can get the writing that I am most comfortable with, getting a rough draft from Claude. It tends to match my writing style. I've had better luck with getting it to emulate my own writing style. And so, I jump back and forth a fair amount.
I do too. Have you tried the new voice feature in ChatGPT, though?
I have not.
So it's conversational and it's low latency. And so it's not where you like record the thing and it processes it and it gives you the thing back. It's like real time. So I stumbled on that last week. It's really kind of funny. I was cursing and I was pissed off because I forget what I'd done, but like a lot of work got lost. And I think it was in an AI tool. And I accidentally clicked this thing on and it was like, calm down. It's going to be okay. And I was like, what is happening? And so I was like, oh, there's a new feature there.
I mean, actually, you saying that, calm down, it's going to be okay. I know it's like a bit of a meme, that about how, somewhere ChatGPT is telling somebody like how brave they were to leave their family, or, like it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Sycophantic. And I would love to see AIs that pushed back as a default. I feel like almost all the AIs need to push back against user input more strongly. If I phrase,
you mean without having to tell them to do so?
Yes, because
I've given
I
them
feel
those
like
instructions and they'll do it for a while. They'll usually lose the thread after some time, but yeah.
But I find like the way that I ask questions has a big impact on if I get any pushback. If I say, I'm thinking about doing X, Y, and Z for these two reasons, is this a good idea? It's like, wow, this is genius. It's amazing that you thought to do this.
You
because,
are brilliant. Did you know you are brilliant? Yeah.
But if instead I write the question and I say, I've been thinking I'm going to do X, Y, and Z because of A, B, and C, but it seems like a bad idea to me and I'm really worried about what I'm missing and not thinking about, then I get a totally different response that points out 2 or 3 holes in my logic or assumptions that I hadn't appreciated I was making. And so, and I think humans do that naturally. If I tell you about an idea that I'm having, I think that whether or not my question was, is this a good idea or is this a bad idea, doesn't
Mm-hmm.
impact the way that you respond to me. If you think it's a bad idea, you'll tell me why, regardless of how I ask the question.
I would,
And
but not everybody would. I think it's
true, true.
positional, actually.
Okay,
I think it
yeah,
has
maybe
I
so.
think it has more to do. I think the posture it takes is that of a kind of like a direct report, or
Yeah,
in your case, a student, or
yeah,
that's
yeah.
how. Yeah, I think that's how it typically responds, unless you tell it to do otherwise.
And I guess
But I
I'm
think you're
looking for
right. It
more
would
of
be
a.
helpful if everybody got that and they didn't have to tell it.
I guess there are times when I want a direct report out of my
Yeah.
AI. I
Yeah.
want it to just take what I say and go do it. I don't want to
Yes.
converse about this.
Right.
But then there are other times that I want a partner and I want it to push back and stress test and be the second set of
Mm-hmm.
eyes and help me see what I'm missing. And so maybe I'm asking for too many different things from a single tool, and there needs to be, something I toggle on and off that's like
I don't I
the
don't know. I'm
physician.
still trying to determine that because in the projects now in both the systems they have project specific instructions. Have you
Mhm.
tested that and put that
Yes.
kind of direction in those? Did it work for a while and stopped working, or how did that play out?
So with projects, I usually focus on in those project instructions with the way that it's interacting with me, and that seems to work pretty good. Now some of them also have these like global instructions that you
Yes,
can give them,
system wide. Mm-hmm.
and I currently have kind of annoying system-wide instructions set up
Mm-hmm.
on Gemini,
Okay.
and I told it I want to be more productive and that I wanted it to be my accountability partner. And
Mm.
so anything that I ask it, if it's not publishing a manuscript or submitting a grant, it'll like answer
I
my
already know where this is
question,
going. Go ahead.
and then it gives me a paragraph long guilt trip about how I need to come up with some micro tasks that'll move this grant forward. And
Oh
I'm
my
like, yeah,
gosh.
well, it's 11 o'clock on a Saturday. I'll work on the grant tomorrow. Please stop asking me every single time
Yes.
about this.
So you created one that like makes you feel bad all the time. Oh, that
Yeah,
reminds me. Have you noticed that it cannot tell when time has elapsed?
time is weird
Time
on
is weird in
these.
AI land. Like I can tell it, okay, we were having this conversation 2 days ago. It's now this day. I'm gonna stop now, like you just said, like because it's you need to stop for the day. And it's fine with like if you tell it that, but when you pick it back up, if you don't tell it how much time has elapsed, it is just lost
Yeah,
completely.
and it
It's like
seems
it
like
doesn't have a
sometimes it.
system clock anywhere.
Yeah, it's like it doesn't know the current date and time, and I'm like, how? Come on, this is a
Yes.
basic thing,
Yeah,
um,
I know.
and I feel like that's the kind of thing that surely will get fixed at some point. But
Somebody's going to think about it at some point. But yeah, temporal is a whole another area of challenge with them, I find. Did you test out Fable? Actually, you told me you tested Fable 5 and it was not doing well for you. Have you had any more success?
I haven't played with it in the last week since we talked last time, and I shouldn't say that it didn't do well for me. Rather, the guardrails were too constrictive for me to really explore it. So when I would try to explore it, it would
Wait a
often
minute. Were
tell
you
me,
trying to build a bomb or uh,
apparently,
hack
coding
a,
and
a
biology,
D&D? I mean,
you
okay.
know?
So your
Um,
use case biology was too was
biology
wouldn't work.
coding seems
Uh,
to really throw the flags on their guardrails. And
okay.
I even sent an email to their, I filled out like a customer service thing and just told them, like, hey, I am doing nothing dangerous. I am like a foundational evolutionary biologist, and I can't get
Hmm.
a single query answered by Fable. Hoping that that will encourage them to evaluate their guardrails and how they're functioning. I mean, I 100% support and think it's a good idea for us to not have a race to the bottom with AI, which sometimes I worry about a little bit, that everybody is just making the best model they can and they aren't spending enough time thinking about how it impacts businesses, education, mental health, everything else.
Is that what you mean
But
by race to the bottom? Like, explain that before you keep
that,
going.
yeah, as I said it, I thought that's probably not the best phrase, but I feel like all these AI companies are just racing to get the biggest share of the market, and
Oh,
without
yeah.
necessarily spending a lot of time thinking about whether or not the functioning that they're producing is going to have negative impacts in a host of areas, whether it's mental health or learning in students, or
Hmm.
broad economic impacts on unemployment and jobs and stuff. So
Yeah, I don't think that's happening at all, really. Not in a functional way. But I don't know how it would happen, though, because even the best intentions with that would be full of landmines. And you always get the national security argument, which is valid, and that if we don't do it, they will, type of thing. That's
yeah,
really
I
hard.
I honestly, I'm not like a big fan of the billionaire tech bros in general, but I feel
You don't think
like
they're all
the
amazing geniuses?
no, um, but I will say that I think that the co-founder of Anthropic, is it Dario? Um, I think that his discussions on this, it seems like Anthropic is at least spending some time trying to think through some of these issues.
Hmm.
And I appreciate that they are, because to me, I'm at an age where I saw the advent of the internet
Hmm.
when, like, I installed a modem on a computer when I was a teenager and like dialed a number.
You
It
remember the
wasn't even
noise
the
it
internet.
made? It was like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you pick up the phone, somebody pick up the phone and you're like, I'm on the internet.
It'd ruin your connection. I
Yeah.
know. It would drop.
Um,
In the early days of
and
Napster, taking like 24 hours to download a
yeah.
song.
And
That
cell
was the best.
phones. I
Yeah.
mean, I feel like I've lived through some pretty big transitions,
Yeah, I know.
but
I think the youngsters think we're crazy because we're like, well, the one time you had to have a phone and it was connected to the wall, and they're like, what?
a dictionary,
I know.
encyclopedias, all kinds of
Card
things.
catalog to find a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
But
I
I
digress.
think,
Continue.
but I think that AI, it has the potential to be more impactful than many of those changes. I don't
Yeah.
know if it will be, but it certainly feels as though it could be. I,
Mm.
I, I mean, I do think it's fundamentally changed personally, like the way that I
Hmm.
get low importance information in my life.
Yes.
I honestly don't really just use raw Google results nearly like I did in the past. I'd say
Yeah.
70% of my Googling has become a query to a chat, an LLM of some sort. And
Yes, and that's something that's really hard for businesses to shift to right now because they're still thinking like, oh, people are finding me the old way, and that's so rapidly shifting. Now, you and I are probably not the best examples, but because Google decided to like willingly give up revenue and start putting Gemini results on the main results page, other people are using AI to find businesses and they don't even know it. That, like my parents, for example, they just read the text and that's it. But yeah. Okay, sorry, you were saying. Back to your point.
I don't know, but I just think that this is this potentially an incredibly transformative change that we're trying to navigate our way through. And
Mm-hmm.
so, I mean, I think this kind of goes back to your question earlier, like, am I an early adopter? I don't think right now that any time in my career that AI is going to replace all scientists. But I do predict that scientists that use AI will replace scientists that don't, because it inevitably, without a doubt, increases uh, your work production. I mean, I can be a more productive scientist by using AI than I can be without using AI. And to me, that means that we have to teach our students how to use it,
Mm-hmm.
because when you hire a graduate from one of my classes, you
Mm-hmm.
want high quality productive output from an employee. I mean, that's what every every boss wants from every employee is high quality work and a large volume of it.
And more
And
specifically, I don't want you doing something that can be done by someone else or something else
yeah,
for less money,
yeah,
effectively. And right now, the way the
exactly.
pricing's working, that's still true for anything AI can safely handle, I think.
Yeah, yeah,
But
100%. And so I just think there's a lot for us to try and navigate and figure out about the best way to use these tools. I run
yeah.
a research lab, which is a little bit like a small business. So I have to get grants that
Hmm.
cover the salaries of all my employees and pay for
Hmm.
my expenses.
Right.
And the thing is, it's just me. I don't have anybody else that's over me in my lab that helps determine like where we're getting money from or how we're spending that money. And honestly, like AI is making me able to get out grants quicker, get out papers quicker,
Hmm.
and be more productive with my students. And so I don't see any way that you can reach your maximum potential and competitiveness without using AI as we move forward, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's interesting to watch people adopt it or, on just like anything, you've got a certain percentage of the population that's very resistant to change, and you've got everybody in the middle, and then you've got the people that are like, let's do it. And watching that play out is interesting. Like, just like in your lab academia context, I think every area is kind of going through this like, okay, what do we do with it? Yay, we've got it. What do we do with it? And then how do we do it? And how do we do it safely? And then to your point a minute ago, the whole thing about like the downstream effects of a lot of these things, we're just not going to know till we run into them because
Yeah.
that's how we roll in
Yeah.
America. We wait to see what blows up first, and then we
Yeah.
like maybe do some compliance or some frameworks or some safety around it. The EU is very different, so maybe they'll have a different path to implementation with it. But I think the general consensus, and I don't, regardless of political perspectives, is that if you do that really proactive compliance with things, it tends to slow innovation. And I think that that's true. So we'll see. I think we all just have to hold on for our dear lives and do our best with
Yeah.
this whole pace.
100%.
And I don't know if you looked at robotics at all, but that to me is the next thing because the AI is now recursively self-improving itself, right? So we've seen the hockey stick and improvement. And then as soon as it can get a hold of robotics, I mean, a whole new world of things become possible.
Yeah. Terminator. Um, no, I'm joking. I'm joking.
Or iRobot,
Um,
which they were
yeah.
good and bad in that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Let's hope for the
Um,
best.
yeah.
This is where,
Um,
by the way, I think kill switches are extremely important. And I don't think anybody's given that enough thought. Or constraints around what they can and cannot have access to because we've modeled permissions around people. And I don't think that's the right framework either there,
wait,
but we'll
say
see.
that again to me
We've
about
modeled
model permission.
permissions for AI around human permissions when really it probably needs
Oh,
to be
okay.
limited to like the session and the task and then needs to be
Okay.
removed. So we'll see if somebody comes up with that. Because otherwise, and I think we've seen this, like they've done things like deleted databases and breached or divulged a lot of information. Like somebody slaps it on a SharePoint instance and then the lowest level employee can like see everything in the company. So there's all sorts of those scenarios happening, at least in the private sector. I don't know about in your world, but
No, I mean, I think that, I mean, I can't speak about academia or at large, but I can tell you that in my own lab, I have accidentally allowed an agentic AI to delete things that I needed. um, and and I feel like I'm pretty careful, and I recognize that these issues
yeah,
exist, and
yeah.
yet I have still made a mistake where I didn't give sufficient context to a model and asked it to do a task, and based on the context that was available and the request that I made, it did what it thought was best, which included deleting
Mm-hmm.
files that I believe were only in that one repository and had to be regenerated from scratch.
Ouch.
Um,
That hurts.
so, I mean, but I would still say that I am far ahead in total productivity over the last 2 years.
Hmm.
And I mean, very far ahead in productivity over the last 2 years due to AI, despite
Yes.
any hiccups or challenges that I've had along the way. And I'm talking maybe like an order of magnitude more production
Hmm.
from me and my lab overall. One of the things that I found incredibly convenient and helpful with AI outside of research is generating training material for my students and my technicians in my lab. So at any given time, I have 8 to 10 people that I'm employing. And it used to be so much work to make, say, so one of the organisms that I study are betta fish. And so I have a betta fish room with like 1,000 fish in it. And I had a training manual that I had written by hand, and it was not bad. It covered the basics, and it was pretty good. But I fed it as well as a bunch of other documents that I have from the university about the way that we have to care for animals that we're doing research on. And I asked it to make a training manual for my students. And it produced a much easier to understand, much more complete training manual than I ever would have spent the time creating. And the same thing goes for workshops that I teach or classes that I teach. I'm able to generate really high quality training material for my students and my
Hmm.
employees in a
Yeah.
much faster manner than I was ever able to do in the past.
Yeah.
So even though I've
I
had,
agree.
big data losses once or twice, on the whole, I'll take the trade off of those mistakes for the
Oh,
added
yeah.
benefits I've gotten.
For sure. I did a post recently where I was like, oh my gosh, I just realized I think I was orchestrating or minding or tending or, whatever, like 4 or 5 AIs at the same time. Like ChatGPT was doing one thing, Claude was doing something else, and then like a native AI tool built into like a video editing tool was off doing it. And I was just like, wow, this was not on my bingo card a year ago. But yeah, the
A thousand
productivity is
percent.
just incredible. For sure, for sure.
I love
Well,
that
this
there's
is
a tool. I just want to say I love that there's a tool where
yeah.
I can literally just spin up basically employees to do things for me, and
Yes.
I can have 5 of them doing things for me. It's great.
Yes. Which brings me to something that I've been kind of thinking about in terms of a framework for really working best with these tools, which is context is king. Think about it as an employee, and you need to give it the context and the training for your business or your school, you, whatever role there is, and then the task. So there's like at least 4 levels of information that you want to train your tools to have about you. At least. Of course, there's projects and other variables involved, but I'm really guiding people towards like if you think about it as onboarding somebody to come in and do this task or this job, you start out at the macro level and you go micro, and they need the same thing any new person would need. So,
I'm going to steal that analogy. No,
yeah,
no, I
feel
really
free.
think that's a good way to explain it because you would never take a person in off the street and say, make this sales report for me. No,
Exactly.
they would need to
Yes.
understand all this thing first, all this stuff about
Yes.
your company first and your clients and everything. That's a really good way to explain why context has to be king.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I
it
like
I think
that.
it makes sense to people. So that's kind of the way I've been explaining it lately, and it seems to land. So you let me know if it works for you as well.
Yeah, it landed on me. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, anything else you want to chat about on AI, or you want to talk about any other projects or ideas, things going on?
I mean, I just think it's such a fun time to be doing this stuff. I think it's amazing that we have this kind of intelligence that's clearly imperfect and stochastic, but I mean, a decade ago, if anyone would have described to you what the worst flagship model can do today, they would have said that is general artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And we have moved the bar so far, and we still say we haven't achieved AGI. But that's because we've moved the bar. A decade ago, if somebody told you that you could have a conversation and you wouldn't be able to tell that it was a computer and that it could write a paper for you and a poem for your girlfriend and a sales report for your boss all in an hour, they would have been like, oh, well, clearly you've developed AGI. And so to get to live through that transition and to get to explore what we can do with these tools is just exciting.
It is. It's really cool. Although I do hear that there are some discussions going on about whether or not we've achieved AGI. I mean, I think there's this gray area where we're not sure what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
So we'll see. But we seem very close, if not already at the early stages of it, based on all the things. But, who knows? We haven't checked the news in 5 minutes. So we could be there and not know it because that's how fast this thing is rolling.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Well, I really appreciate your time. This has been super fun and informative.
Same.
And I appreciate
Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, thanks much, and we'll talk
soon.
Take
care.
Bye. Thanks for joining us in this episode of AI in the Wild. See you next time.